In our continuing look at the EU Office with Onlyoffice, it looks as though LibreOffice is now coming out with some statements against EU Office. So this is actually getting interesting. Thanks for checking out this video by Switch Linux. If you like this type of content, subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Leave us a like and a comment down below. Of course, we have been talking about the Onlyoffice versus LibreOffice, where Onlyoffice alleges that LibreOffice violated the licensing terms by forking the code and basically changing the logos and effectively re-releasing it under a term of EU sovereignty. And the thing is that the GPL does have the ability to have extra licensing terms for certain legal reasons, but there's also a provision under, I think it's section 10, that basically says, yeah, there's nothing else you can really force outside something legal. So some law that says you must include something, yeah, you need to continue to include that. But any other requirements you might make, then there is a problem. Now, the challenge that Onlyoffice has is that a lot of the founders and a lot of the initial code was written in Russia. Now, it's all open source, so you can audit it. You can make sure there's nothing malicious in there. And there is a lot of European hatreds towards Russia for what many would call obvious reasons. And I'm not going to dispute that one way or the other. But what happened is the people at Onlyoffice went to Latvia. Yes, see, I corrected it that way. They moved over there to say, we're not from Russia, we're from over here. And the problem is that they still have the majority of people working on their code are from Russia. And that's not a huge deal because you can audit this code. It's open source. It's not going to be horribly malicious that we know of, except there are some proprietary parts inside of it, I think. Actually, I think I was looking into this. I'm not sure there is, actually. Anyway, I'll leave somebody else to research if there's proprietary blobs inside of Onlyoffice. But what there is, according to Nextcloud and several other people, is that Onlyoffice tends to not accept a lot of revisions and changes from outside their own group. And that really is the fundamental problem with open source software. So in accordance with the GPL license it's released under, they forked the code, changed the logos around. They said very clearly in the repository, this is a fork of Onlyoffice, and they were releasing EU Office or Euro Office. And this was supposed to fix the digital sovereignty issue that EU nations are looking for, where they do not want to rely on Microsoft Office and other US-based companies. They want to have some form of digital sovereignty in the EU. And with all that being said, that I completely support. Now, why did they fork Onlyoffice and not something like LibreOffice? Well, the reason for that is LibreOffice is and primarily remains, in fact, entirely remains a desktop Office suite, whereas Onlyoffice has a strong web-based component like Google Docs, Microsoft Office, etc. Or I guess we should say, is it Office 365 or Microsoft 365? Is it, what are they calling it this week? They change the name of that stupid thing like every week, you know. I don't even know what it's called this week. I don't really care. I personally generally use offline software. Now, my Nextcloud that I use for some collaboration uses Calibora, which is a different application from Onlyoffice. That also works, but it's not as mature of an Office suite as is Onlyoffice, which is why they forked that one. Now, the problem happens that EU's Euro Office is coming out and saying, hey, we are the first Office suite from the EU, and that is where LibreOffice took some swipes back, because it is disingenuous. And to LibreOffice's point from the blog at the Document Foundation, the organization that runs LibreOffice, this is an open letter to Office Suite users just before the Euro Office announcement. Now, this was 6.8, and Euro Office was supposed to be released 6.9. The desktop editor, there are no packages available yet, and they still have on their website a wait list. So this was supposed to come out in yesterday as I'm recording this, but it hasn't come out yet. And so this was supposed to come out the day before it came out, but LibreOffice isn't officially released yet. Of course, you can grab the code and compile it, whatever else. But over here, Office Suite users, recent days you have had various articles announcing the arrival of LibreOffice, which is being marketed as the first open source Office Suite developed in Europe. We feel compelled reluctantly, since open source should rest on transparency, not deception, to correct the claim. The first open source Office Suite developed in Europe was OpenOffice in 2021, based on StarOffice's source code. And of course, OpenOffice, that is the office that LibreOffice was forked out of. It was a very good Office suite. It duplicated Microsoft Office all the way up until it fell out of active development. But in 2010, LibreOffice forked out of there. There are two genuine open source Office suites built from source code that originated in Europe. They are not freeware, a freeware clone of MS Office, whose code provenance is undisclosed, nor a product that has rebranded itself out of pure opportunism to ride today's wave of digital sovereignty. So they're kind of coming down and saying, yeah, Onlyoffice may have a few valid points. Now, I've done full videos about that, and I'm not sure. It's clear in their repository that it's kind of based on, if I go back to LibreOffice, it's clear in here that it's based on Onlyoffice. They're not hiding that fact. Is there a challenge to the fact that they simply forked it? Obviously, they're probably working on some form of modification, so I'm not going to completely buy that they're just, they're not disclosing the source code. I will absolutely agree with Document Foundation here that they are riding the opportunism of the digital sovereignty. I do agree with that. That really is pretty clear in what's going on here. And so with all of that being said from this, they are trying to come out and basically say, hey, you see all this branding. Now, where does LibreOffice have a point? Well, LibreOffice is not an online first Office suite. In fact, it's difficult to edit documents inside of LibreOffice in an online setting. Now, some people don't want the online setting. Some people want or need the online setting. And so that certainly is a question that we have. I am a LibreOffice user with Calibora in my Nextcloud, but I don't actually do a lot of online collaboration with documents. I have infrastructure in my chain of command here that allows me to do that without relying on big tech. But first and foremost, I am a LibreOffice user. But other thing that they are doing, and this is one of the other things that they point out in their open letter, is that LibreOffice and Onlyoffice both push forward with Microsoft's basically vendor lock-in, because everyone sits down and says, well, the Office, the docx files are the Office standard. No, that's just what Microsoft has wanted to do to keep you utilizing their proprietary system. Okay. It's worth remembering many of us who champion digital sovereignty today were silent in 2006 when the ODT standard, the pillar of digital sovereignty, was announced. Not only did they not listen to us during all these years, but in the same cases greeted us with a condescending smile. You keep your cute little ODT files. We'll be using docx. As a person who uses these things professionally, though, as an author who writes and publishes and sends books out to the same professional book printers that every major publisher uses, the ODT file format is more robust than the docx. The docx file format is really designed for a much faster portability. They are much smaller files, but that means it carries a lot less data with it. I can put all of the solid formatting material with fine detail inside of an ODT file in an open standard. I cannot do that same thing with a docx file with as much ease. And so that really brings into their next point. If we speak of digital sovereignty in Europe today, it's thanks to the Document Foundation and the LibreOffice community members at large who kept the flag of open source Office suites flying when everyone was predicting their demise, and who continue to develop the only truly open and standard format that guarantees digital sovereignty, as is provided full user control over the content. So document formats are still rife with misinformation. This is understandable on part of Microsoft, which has developed and controls the proprietary OOXML format designed precisely to prevent digital sovereignty, maintaining content lock-in. It's far less understandable on the part of companies that claim to advocate open source, such as those promoting LibreOffice. LibreOffice defaults to the fully proprietary OOXML document format developed and controlled solely by Microsoft, making it a de facto ally of Microsoft in its content lock-in strategy, with control remaining firmly in Redmond and far from Europe. So what does this mean effectively? Well, Onlyoffice has maintained this OOXML default because their main marketing thing is we are an alternative to Microsoft Office. That's really what their goal is. And so LibreOffice forking this out, I think one of the best things they could do, if not before launch, leading in sometime very soon, is shift that main default over to the ODT format. LibreOffice likes that format. It works out great. And frankly, those document formats are fine. They are perfectly fine. And if all of EU decides they're going to use the ODT format to maintain digital sovereignty away from the proprietary formats of Microsoft, well, guess what? That one change would make a whole lot of the argument LibreOffice here has go away. So I would listen to LibreOffice here, and I would definitely move your LibreOffice to prefer the default of the ODT standard, maintaining, of course, the ability to do the docx if you need to. But I think just even to smite the Americans all the more, you should just, whenever you need to send some international documents, just send them in the ODT format and say, this is the open source format. You keep your proprietary Microsoft Office garbage to your dirty little American selves and let us use the open source formats instead. And having used these things for over 10 years now, solely, I got to say the ODT format, you'll have to pry the ODT format from my cold dead hands. They conclude their letter by saying, so despite what is written in support of LibreOffice, the latest of the Office suites developed in Europe and not the first, the announcement is not against Microsoft. On the contrary, it strengthens Microsoft's strategy against European digital sovereignty, or if you prefer, against the freedom of European users to control and manage their own content. And that really is the crux of the situation here, that LibreOffice is coming out and saying a whole lot of marketing things with digital sovereignty with the statements EU has been making. But the challenge that we have is that those statements may not all be entirely true. And that's one of those things that we need to keep in mind as we look forward at what is going on, is that Office suites, unless you're doing super duper amazingly advanced stuff, one Office suite's going to work as well as another. If you're using Microsoft Office just because that's just what we've always used, I encourage you. This is free. LibreOffice is free. Download it to your computer and play with it. If all you're doing is your own personal documents, you're doing your budgeting spreadsheets and maybe writing your own personal notes in it, try it out. Give it a try. See if it's going to work for you. Absolutely. Now, on the other coin, you may be forced to use it. Okay, you're forced to use it. But no matter what you're doing, try out the various Office suites. Give Onlyoffice a try. Give LibreOffice a try. If you have access to Nextcloud or some other means to test out Calibora for online stuff, instead of defaulting to Google Docs or Office Online Docs, go to something else more open source like that. I think Proton now has documents in there as well. You do have the Onlyoffice, which is really pioneering. Where Onlyoffice's main platform is it is really championing the online collaborative Office system. And for that, it's good. All right. all that being said, though, one of the things we have to recognize is that the Office documents, they'll pretty much all work perfectly fine. Make sure you have the same fonts back and forth, and make sure you're not doing anything super duper amazingly advanced. That's where formatting stuff is going to be broken. And we're talking, basic spreadsheets. We're talking basic text documents. I did have somebody leave a comment in our Choose Your Own Adventure video the other day saying that he still has to use Microsoft Office products for like data presentations and things because, and I asked him, he didn't actually specify. I asked him he tried LibreOffice, it didn't work. I asked him if he has tried Onlyoffice. I didn't have a response yet as of this video. So if you're watching this, if you could leave me a comment, did you try Onlyoffice as well and see if that would also work? Because their big value proposition is we are a one-to-one compatibility with Microsoft. If that's true and you could do a lot of that advanced work, go with Onlyoffice. I'm not totally against Onlyoffice here, okay? I prefer LibreOffice, and they make some very valid points. EU Office, Euro Office here is absolutely riding the digital sovereignty wave. And that does come off as being a little disingenuous. So, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts about all that in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and let me know which Office suite you are using.